What's up everyone, Alex here. I think it's fair to say that a good portion of Souls fans feel that FromSoft's the only company they can trust with making great games in the genre. I mean, makes sense, right? They practically invented this niche and have continuously evolved it ever since. Because of its ever-increasing popularity, many pretenders have emerged, attempting to claw their way to the top. The thing is that most of these just come across as pale imitations that miss the mark, either by not fully grasping the intricate nuances of what makes these types of games special, or just not differentiating themselves enough to stand out in a memorable way. Luckily, Team Ninja have proven to be noteworthy outliers, with releases such as Neo, Stranger of Paradise, and now their latest effort, Wulong Fallen Dynasty. In case you missed it, Wulong Fallen Dynasty is a historical fiction-themed Souls-like set in ancient China, developed by Team Ninja and published by Koei Tecmo, who provided me with this review code shown running on PC. You play the role of an unnamed soldier, traveling through a dark fantasy version of the later Han Dynasty, where demons plague the Three Kingdoms. Now let's get one thing out of the way here. Unless you have a deep love for the romance of the Three Kingdoms, chances are good that the main draw of this game won't be its story. I mean, you don't even get to name the character you created. And this is okay, because what this all means is that it's not the game's focus. And while there isn't much to say about the writing in and of itself, the setting is another matter entirely. Instead of the grit and grime of dark fantasy commonly associated with Souls games, we're treated to locations, weapons, and creatures steeped in Chinese myth and legend, blending the historical with the fantastical. What this means is that you'll be fighting side by side with known figures like Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, while also shooting fireballs out of your hands at crazy-looking demons. On top of giving the game a unique visual identity, it in turn affects how the game is played, as all of your character's movements feel as if they were carefully choreographed to convey the same sense of weight and power you would come to expect from the finest of Chinese martial arts films. Wulong places a strong emphasis on character building, and how that directly feeds into the combat. In order to level up, points must be distributed between 5 different elements, each dictating how stats are increased, what spells can be learned, and how effective certain weapons become. Normally, Souls-likes tend to have about 8 to 12 stats that a player needs to worry about. But by reducing that to just 5, each one feels far more significant, and can make decision-making paradoxically more difficult. Sure, you can just spend all of your points on wood so that you can increase your health and tank more damage, but by ignoring earth, for instance, your equipment load will remain low, and you'll be stuck wearing very light and weak armor. Alternatively, foregoing water will make it harder for you to employ stealth. Ignoring metal will affect your summons and spells, and neglecting fire will mean that you won't be able to rain down exploding doom on your foes. Which brings me to another point that makes Wulong stand out amongst its contemporaries. While magic can be ignored for all of those melee purists out there, regardless of how you decide to strengthen your character, you will always have access to a variety of different spells. Powering up any of the elements will just naturally grant you access to more spells. As someone that tends to favor pure strength builds in these types of games, I did find myself experimenting with the magic system and discovering interesting ways to incorporate them into my playstyle. Keeping praises aside, I want to talk about the first mission's design a little bit, since it's curiously made in a way that might make you feel overconfident early on. As you probably surmised, you'll start the game easy enough, effortlessly chopping down foes left and right without much struggle. All semblance of an easy time quickly melts, however, when you finally come face to face with Wulong's first boss, which, depending on your approach, will serve you a healthy helping of humble pie. While many will claim that failing on the first boss is par for the course for this type of game, the fact that the enemies leading up to it, and how they don't test you on Wulong's gameplay fundamentals, is a curious one. Souls games are often used as a scapegoat every time someone encounters a difficult game. But the true beauty of these games is how mechanics are constantly introduced and piled on top of each other, continuously testing the player's comprehension of what is asked of them. And given how the enemies you fight early on don't really force you to use Wulong's mechanics in a meaningful way, it does make me wonder what their purpose is outside of just being leveling fodder. But once I realized this, I turned my focus on using said enemies to come to grips with the game's deflect system. And to the surprise of nobody, getting good and switching to a different weapon loadout worked immensely. This is where the more overt comparisons to Sekiro become clear, although not to a point of being purely derivative. While parrying was arguably the most important method of retaliation in that game, Wulong's deflect system, on the other hand, feels like another tool in your arsenal, albeit a very potent one. Pretty much every single physical and magical attack can be deflected, and when an enemy glows red, those net the biggest reward when countered successfully, as it opens the enemy up for a vicious and cool-looking reprisal. Thankfully, there's more to combat than simply performing counterattacks. There's a range of weapons to choose from that each offer their own pros and cons, from power, speed, range, and a number of hits. While not quite as combo-focused as Nioh, the quickness and brutality found when confronting one's foes feels wholly unique to this game. Eventually, it becomes a dance of sorts, attacking enemies with ferocity, deflecting incoming attacks, and performing powerful counterblows. And when everything clicks, it all looks and feels incredible. From the excellent sense of progression to the kinetic and nuanced combat system, Wulong is a joy to play as you truly feel as if you're slowly becoming an epic Chinese warrior of myth and legend. And you'll probably feel that way too, because after that trial by fire at the start, the rest of your journey through Wulong will be relatively smooth sailing. Taking the time to master its deflect system really goes a long way in helping manage tougher encounters later. And while I wouldn't go as far as to say that you can face roll every combat encounter in Wulong, I can't really say that they were all that tough either. Admittedly, there were a few encounters that truly tested my skills, but I never truly found myself feeling nearly as caught unawares as I did with that first boss. Before playing the game, I originally thought that this was going to be one of those games that I was only going to be able to recommend to hardcore Souls fans. So imagine my surprise to find out that this wasn't the case at all. This is to say that Wulong Fallen Dynasty is a great game for both newcomers and veterans alike. While I still wouldn't necessarily say that this should be someone's initial foray into the world of Souls and the like, this isn't anywhere near among the most brutal and unforgiving. But what cannot be denied is that this game is a ton of fun, with a great sense of progression, weighty game feel, and deep combat, while also managing to distinguish itself from the competition by borrowing certain ideas and transforming them into something new. Finally, after so many years, the Yellow Turban Rebellion can be exciting again.